I'm just going to ignore that. It seems to be working, but right here it says live streaming is not available right now. That's sure. Okay. Well, we'll just see. We'll see, won't we? Yeah, it seems to be working actually just fine. Thanks, YouTube. Okay. Nope, still screen says, oh, there it is. Now we, okay. Oh, Lord. All right. All right. Let's see if this actually works. I'm dubious. Possibly super dubious. Pop out chat and button. Okay, there we go. As soon as I hit start streaming, it like made a 2 count. YouTube did, and then popped up a big overlay screen that says live streaming is not available right now. Finish, and you're like, no. But then behind the scenes, I could see that it had kicked in, and the green light came on, and all that stuff. So I don't know. Oops. Now, hang on. My screen's all screwy here. Good day. How you doing? Moderator Matt, how you doing? Too quiet tonight. Is that what I am? All right. Last time I was too loud. So if I turn this up a little bit, does that help? What if I do this? Does that help? Why is that? Hang on a second. No, it's using the right mic. I don't know. I think we'll get a new mic. If I turn it all the way up, that's too much probably. I don't know. How's it sound? Let's see here. Good morning from Woodbury, Tennessee. Finally caught a live show. I would like to quickly shout out to Tiny Diodes. Before the show even started, Tiny Diodes was the first person to catch that I had a librarian in the thumbnail. That was the joke. You know, it's books and all that stuff, and then that's a Space Marine librarian in Terminator armor. But yeah, anyway, and then they mentioned that, and it I'm glad somebody found that. There you go. All right, so. Please deposit $5 to complete stream. Gosh, I hope not. I don't know how I would get the. I have $5 on me. I do. Weirdly, I don't usually. I don't know how I would get it in the camera. I don't. Anyway, let's see here. Better, fine. Good to hear. Good. There you go. Loud and clear now. I thought it was fine before. You know, it's always hard to tell. There was a big update, not this time but last time, to the software I use, XSplit here. I don't know why I use XSplit here and down in the basement I use OBS, but I do. And it changed things around, and it's been a little wackadoo. So, like I said, thinking about a new microphone. There's a company out there called Beacon that makes a USB dynamic mic, which I've not come across before. So, and I've been reading good things about it, so I might pick that up and then. I mean, you'd probably see it in the frame because it would be kind of like here, most likely, you know, in this, but that's fine. I'm not doing anything down here usually anyway, so that's fine. Let's see here. Chile, West Virginia, Bathgate, Scotland, Erskine, Scotland. Got some Scotlands there going on. South York, Lansing, Michigan. At least I'm assuming Michigan. Ogden, Utah, Prairie du Sac, Oklahoma. Rode mics are awesome. I own several. Yes, I do. Absolutely quality Viking last night. I've been watching it back today. Oh, well, that's good to hear. Yeah. So I was playing last night on Twitch. I was playing Valheim. Did that last week too, as well on Saturday night. And I've just started a new character. Just been like, you know, building a little house and finding some goblins to slap around. And I did fight a troll last night and didn't die. The first time. Second time I was killed. But the first time I did it, I killed him, and then the bigger one came up. Well, it wasn't bigger. He just had a club, which I've never come across before. They usually just throw rocks, but this guy, he was carrying a tree, and he slapped me with it, and it hurt a lot. So it was fine, though. I got over it. Australia, NYC, Columbus, windy London, Oxford, UK, Newfoundland, Ontario, Amarillo, BJ Morph, how you doing? Wurzburg, Germany. Newmarket, UK, Winnicott. About to build a Spartan bike from miniature scenery. Miniature scenery. I'm not sure I'm familiar with them. Name sounds familiar, but I could be thinking of something else from... There was a company in... Is miniature scenery in Australia? It's always a bigger goblin. That's true. It's a very good point. Huntsville, Alabama. Putting some Eldar together today. We got Russia. Away from, I'm going to say Boston. Although it's spelled Botan, but there could be a Botan. That's possibly. Shanghai. Dubai. Kazakhstan. Spokane, Washington. Memphis. Made a decision to not get back into Warhammer. There you go. All right. I mean, that's a choice you can make, certainly. I'm not... Let me just start off the show by saying I'm not anti-Games Workshop. I'm not anti-Warhammer. Some of the things that they do I'm not a fan of, certainly, but I'm not against the company. But even if I were, they're a big multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they can take care of themselves. You know what I mean? I've seen some discussions recently, like just as much as this weekend, of people like, you know, getting out there and kind of defending Games Workshop's honor, and I'm like, the poor defenseless little multi-billion-dollar corporation would probably not do the same for you, as it turns out. Just FYI. So that's maybe a baseline that we can start at there. Manitoba. Miniature Scenery are the Aussie company that do MDF stuff. That's the one that I'm thinking of. But maybe they do regular models now, too. Used to call themselves CNC Scenery Workshop. They should have called themselves CNC Scenery Factory. So they could be like, dun, 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 like that. Anyway, but they're switching away from mechanical to laser cutting. Lasers are pretty cool, I'm not going to lie. Green Stuff World pins finally came in. Pins. I love them. I have already been making stuff. Used moss for... I am allergic. You're allergic to flocking. I don't like flocking. I don't think I'm allergic to it, though. Maybe I am. I'm allergic to a bunch of different things. Happy Almost Monday from the Philippines. Absolutely. Dry brushing with makeup brushes is one of the greatest hobby tips I've ever heard. It works awesome. I'm a big fan. I do it all the time on nearly every model that I touch these days. It's just going to be some dry brushing. I was working on a little tiny piece of terrain, just like a little broken wall yesterday. I was painting the bases on the clan rats that I just finished on Twitch, previous to the guys that I'm working on now, which are other Skaven, but they're like HQ units and stuff like that. But I painted 11 clan rats, but I didn't paint their bases on stream because it's a lot of like waiting for wash to dry. So, you know, and then when you're waiting for the wash to dry, then you pick up some other little random piece of terrain that's been sitting half painted on your desk for a while, and then you start doing stuff to it, like throwing a lot of wash on it. And as I was putting the wash on it, a lot of, you know, Agrax Earthshade, because just what you do for terrain, at least what I do. My thought was, this is going to look awesome once I get to bring out the old makeup brush and do some dry brushing on it. So I'm really looking forward to that. Probably be doing it today, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll post a picture on Twitter or something like that. Who knows? Could happen. Upstate New York. Looking forward to the new Warcry book to come out. The Tome of Champions 2021, which is weird since it's 2022. Yeah, but we know that everything is going to be slow and coming out at the wrong time for the rest of eternity. So it's just the global shipping issue. So we've got that going on. It's not their fault, I don't think. That all being said, it's going to be a real bummer if the new version of Warcry comes out this summer on time, and then, you know, you'll be like, wow, I've had this book for, what, 5 months? Let's see here. I come for Nick. I stay for the 90s dance music jokes. Well, I mean, it was low-hanging fruit, I'm not going to lie. I finally finished the Dark Vengeance Chosen that I have had since 6th edition. We were just talking about that last night, whether that came out in 7th or 6th, and I was pretty sure it came out in 6th, because then they repackaged Dark Vengeance later on with a 7th edition book instead of the original 6th edition book, and I was like, huh, but that's what they did. Yeah. What was I just... Chosen, yes. Your videos have helped motivate me to begin clearing out years of backlog. Thanks for all you do. Well, absolutely. Not a problem there. Angry. Janax. Yeah, because we were talking about the Chosen that are in the new box set that's got the Eldar in it. It's like Eldar versus Chaos Space Marines. and there's Chosen in there, and I'm like, they kind of remind me of the Chosen that came out in the old Dark Vengeance box, back in the old days, which wasn't all that long ago, as it turns out, but, still. Could mix both of those together, to the Dark Vengeance ones and the ones from the new box, and have yourself an actual entire squad, or maybe 2. Depends on how big the squads are for Chosen. They may be max size 5. I don't remember, actually. Just ordered my first 2 units for a demon army, Khorne Bloodletters, and some demonettes. Super excited to stick them together and try painting for the first time. Nice. It is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. Nice kitty mug. Well, thank you. Let's see here. Good morning from snowy Massachusetts. How you doing? Greetings from Detroit. How you doing, Gaddis? Always have 1 pot of water for your metals and 1 for your regular pigments. That's what they say. I never do it. I always have just got 1 water pot, and I'm just like, it's fine. I also like to put metallics on my wet palette, like some sort of savage, and it's fine. Again, if I was getting really into display painting, trying to win an award, I would probably follow a lot more rules. But I'm a rule breaker. I'm a rebel, Dottie, a loner. This is actually the first YouTube live stream I ever turn on. Well, there you go, Richie. Welcome. I hope you have a good time. Do you think of the miniatures gaming community industry as too focused on GW products at the expense of other good games? I mean, I think that because they're the biggest, they have the most fans, which is how they get to be the biggest. And so therefore I know that, and I've done this myself, I understand that there are times when, you're like, hey, I could talk about this game that's really super cool, but if I talk about Games Workshop, then I'm likely to get more views. You know what I mean? If you talk about a game that no one's ever heard of, but you found is really cool, it is difficult to get traction on that and views on that. And so, it depends on kind of where you are, maybe in your YouTube or whatever content creation career. It also depends on what you like. Like I said earlier, I still like Games Workshop stuff. I generally only play Warcry right now, but I do still use their models for a lot of other games too, because I don't find myself interested in army games anymore. So I'm not, that kind of puts out 40K and Age of Sigmar. That's too many models for me. I want to have smaller groups of models. Kill Team, I was a big fan of the previous version. This version I'm not as big a fan of. Warcry, I dig a lot, so that's cool. But I'm already taking a look at a lot of different models from Games Workshop that I'm going to kit bash and add stuff to and take things away from and whatever, and use them for games of Forbidden Psalm and Planet 28 and Space Weirdos and other stuff like that. There's a game that's the person that wrote Forbidden Psalm right now has a game that's in crowdfunding called The Last War. And it is basically kind of a skirmish World War I with like spooky monsters and like one of the first things that it mentions in that as I was reading through the crowdfunding thing is ghost tanks, and I was like, yeah, World War I ghost tanks, I'm on board. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So that kind of stuff is interesting to me. Zona Alpha, whatever. I don't know. There's this game called Rain in Hell I've heard about. And so there's that. But my point is that like, if you want to be a content creator, you have to kind of make a bit of a decision there to some degree. But also with me specifically, because I am talking generally to people who are new to the hobby, they probably heard about the hobby through Games Workshop. Again, being the biggest. So, that's also something that I need to be able to reference and such like that. So there's that. The Photo Owl from Manchester, England. How you doing? Uncle that lives on the edge. That's his, yes. Let's see here. That all being said, I did take the shrink wrap off of my Dead Zone 3rd edition books that I ordered a month and a half ago. Yesterday. I took the shrink wrap off and I was going to go sit down in the sunroom and start to read, and then my mom called, and then there was things I had to do, and then I didn't. Anyway, but I'm going to actually start taking a look at it. So then I'll know more about that too, which is nice. Let's see here. Where are we? All right, hello from Canada. Have you started to warm up to Kill Team 2021? No. No. Eventually I'm going to paint my orcs from the Octarius box, and then I will play some like fully painted, funsy games that way, and then that'll probably be the end. Just because I'm not, like I said, stuff in the compendium doesn't do anything for me, and I've purchased a couple of White Dwarfs just to take a look at the new lists that they're making you buy in White Dwarf, just so that I know about them. But I'm not gonna be interested in chasing all of the. I don't want to have to go through and buy all the lists again separately when I already. Well, when I did not pay $50 for the compendium, I will be perfectly frank. But the average person's paying $50 for the compendium to get real dull lists, and then having to pay $12 or whatever for every White Dwarf and Chalnath and all. Yeah, it's a bad business model. I don't like it. So. If I take just the original Octarius box as a standalone game, it's fine. Still don't like the measuring shapes. That's dumb. But otherwise, fine. But the rest of it, I'm not interested in. How's weather over yonder in Wisconsin? We got a little bit of snow on Friday, like a tiny little bit of snow, not much. It's 21 degrees Celsius right now. Going to be a high 36 today, which means stuff's going to get damp. So that's fine. Metallics on a wet palette? Clearly not the Vallejo metal color. They will completely blow out on a wet palette. Not metal color, but the airbrush stuff that I use. That likes to stay, where it needs to be. Let's see. Hi from Mexico. How you doing? Salutations from snow-covered Indianapolis, preparing to paint some Mansions of Madness miniatures using the Zenithal contrast technique. Wish me luck. It's a great technique. It's very fast and works well and gives you a good result. And I use it all the time at this point. What was that alternative World War I game called? I'm interested in that. The Last War. I think it's on Kickstarter, which I was a little bummed about because I'm kind of done with Kickstarter, but I don't know. I've had some I've chatted a little tiny Twitter bit back and forth on Twitter with the creator of Forbidden Psalm, and so and they follow me and whatnot. And I was like, oh, you're making something new. That's cool. And then I saw this, and I was like, geez, gosh, it's on Kickstarter, which I don't like right now. But so that was very interesting. Let's see here. I don't play war games, but I have been painting minis. I started with never touching a brush. It's been really enjoyable. Thanks for the videos to help keep me motivated. Well, absolutely. Yellow Insfill? I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but I think I got close. That's the thing. That's the thing that's so interesting with this hobby is you could be just like, well, I just like to, I will build, I guess, and then just play with my friends, and we all play with unpainted minis or whatever, and that's fine. So there's the gaming aspect of it just by itself. You can also be like, I like the painting and the gaming, or you can say, I just like the painting. And, and there's people that just like to collect. I know a guy who only likes to kit bash. Like, he does not paint ever. He just builds and he makes new things and sculpts them, and then it's like, there you go. And it will be like part metal and part plastic and part green stuff and things like that. And I'm like, when are you going to paint that stuff? He's like, oh, that's not what I do. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, it's... But he doesn't even play the games. He just likes to build and convert and stuff like that. He also gets into model airplanes and all kinds of things like that too. But those he paints, which I think is also interesting. But nonetheless, So it's definitely it's a hobby with a lot of different facets. Let's say that. I started at the start of the pandemic with D&D. Chimera up in Appleton had one of your YouTube videos on Kill Team playing, and that's what got me into Warhammer. No kidding. Well, I'm trying to remember. Last time I was there, did I see a TV? I haven't been there in a while, but I've been there since the beginning of the pandemic. They have moved things around. Last time I looked, I've noticed they've moved things around. Let's see here. Hi from Stoke-on-Trent, England. I played my first game of Warhammer 40k 9th edition. Haven't played for a while and nearly got tabled. I lost, but I had great fun. I mean, great fun's the important part. If you had fun, you won, in my opinion. So, I think that's cool. I think you meant 21F. I did, yes. 21F today, high of 36F. Good morning from Resin. First time live. Good to know we still drop everything for mom, even at our age. Well, yeah. I'm also fed up of the constant GW book spam and new editions I can't keep up with. Just focusing on minis now. My New Year's resolution was less paper, more plastic, and I'm sticking to it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. The thing that I've been noticing is that Games Workshop has been like they've just been going real crazy on the books lately. What I find interesting is that the plastics are predominantly almost all made there in Nottingham. They have their own factory. The books are all printed in China. So in this global shipping Charlie Foxtrot that we're kind of currently finding ourselves in, it seems weird to ramp up the books. In my opinion, it would make more sense to ramp up the plastics, although they need cardboard boxes to put the plastics in, and those also come from China, from what I understand. What I think the Games Workshop needs to do, and this is, I'm sure they're asking for my opinion on this. I'm sure they're really looking for my advice. But it would be a good idea for them to try to find a printer who's a little closer to home. You know what I mean? Like something in Europe, maybe, or even in the UK. That'd be super dope, wouldn't it? But the China thing, yeah, that's got to be tough right now with just, container ships stuck all over. I mean, I know, so I get stuff from Games Workshop from time to time, like for review and whatnot, and things like that. I have actually just recently asked to reduce that. I just last week, and I finally got an email back saying, okay, we'll do that. I asked them to stop sending me 40K stuff because I don't play it. I don't really talk about it. I mean, I mention it, I refer to it, but I don't they send products and I don't show them off because that's not really my thing these days. Warcry, send me Warcry stuff. Even Kill Team, I'll talk about that stuff. Box games and things like that. Stuff that the new players are getting into. But they've sent me so many books recently and so many different things that I'm just kind of like, can we not do that? So I won't be seeing hopefully as much of that stuff anymore. But I have been noticing just this amazing ramp up of all of these different books lately, and just so many of them. And I don't know. It seems to me like if they were printing that stuff closer to home, they would probably be. When they send you something, they send you also a date, and they're like, you can't talk about it until this date. They call it an embargo date. Well, I don't know if they call it that. That's what it's called in general in the industry, an embargo date. Can't talk about it till this date and this time. Cool. And partially that's to even the playing field amongst all the different people that they've sent the stuff to. If they send it to somebody in the UK, they'll get it probably tomorrow. If they send it to me, it might take a week and a half. It depends on how they do it. And so then they kind of set this thing, and it also works with their marketing, strategy about like when they're going to release and pre-order and blah, blah, blah. Well, those dates over the last 6 months will slide all the time. Like we'll get an email saying, hey, you know how we said you can't talk about it till here? You can talk about it now actually 3 weeks earlier. But this thing that we were going to let you talk about next week, you can't actually talk about it for another 3 weeks because like it's stuck on a boat, and it's just like, the targets are real hard to hit right now in shipping. So in my opinion, it would make a lot of sense if they're going to keep continuing to crank out these books constantly, which I don't know that they should necessarily do either. Although I'm sure it probably has a great profit margin. You'd think it would make sense for them to try to find something a little closer to home. Let's see here. Enjoying reading the Lord of the Rings rules. Very good rule set, and has a section on refreshments. Well, if there's a game that's going to have a section on refreshments, it's certainly Lord of the Rings. Not the Horus Heresy or 40K, I suppose. Maybe a little bit of Age of Sigmar. Alternative World War I has been in my wheelhouse lately. I ordered up some British infantry from Irregular Miniatures the other day. Nice. Knockstar Fox. What's turned you off Kickstarter? They seem real interested in crypto and NFTs lately. Like they're heading in that direction. So already right there, I'm like, nope, no thank you. Plus just the general, crowdfunding in general is, I get it when you need to use it. But I don't know. I was to a point where I would just all of a sudden get like a weird package in the mail, and you'd be like, oh, this finally showed up 2 years later. Now, when you dial back on a lot of those things too, and you work with people that, you maybe even do a crowdfunding, you like kind of know the person, or of the person, that they've got a track record, and you're like, this will probably show up when they say it will. Great, that's fine. But Kickstarter itself, the company, not just like Kickstarter. A lot of people will talk about, oh, you Kickstarted that. Oh, really? Yeah, over on GameFound or over on Indiegogo. Well, Kickstarter is not like Xerox or Kleenex. It's an actual company. But anyway, crowdfunding is the actual term. I crowdfunded this. Oh, where did you do it? On Kickstarter or whatever. Anyway, long story short is, yeah, I'm not a big fan of crypto. So that's why I'm not real happy with those guys. And then I get this weekend, Gumroad. Have you ever heard of Gumroad? It's a place where you can buy digital stuff. Like you could sell PDFs, you could sell digital music, you can sell digital pretty much whatever. They've also had a weird weekend of crypto shenanigans going on, like them saying, hey, we're going to start doing this, and then people going, that's a terrible idea, and they're like, well, you're stupid. And it's just like, it's been weird doubling down, and I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know that I've ever used Gumroad. I maybe bought something once off of them, maybe like some Photoshop brushes, like the digital files that you use for Photoshop brushes. I might have bought something like that from Gumroad once a long time ago. But anyway. Rangers of Shadow Deep and 5 Parsecs from Home are my go-to games now. Best part is one book for each. Ding. Yes, indeed. Let's see. Bring on second breakfast. Well, I'll have lunch eventually. I don't have any second breakfast right now. Looking at the back of the chapter approved, made in the UK, printed by Hickling and Squires in the UK. Well, that's new then, if that's the case, because a lot of their stuff's always been printed in China. If they're getting it printed in the UK, then good on them, honestly. I don't think I have chapter. Is that the ones that's in the spiral? Because maybe that's what it is. But the normal books, at least the last ones I've looked at, I should probably look at the most recent one they sent, but that'd be good to see. I would like to see them starting to get stuff printed in the UK, or at least in Europe or something. And again, I'm not anti-Chinese or anything like that. It's just that right now, it's on the other side of the planet. It's always been on the other side of the planet, it turns out. But it's just really hard for all that stuff to get around the world right now. So, you know. Let's see here. Someone who enjoys Necromunda, boy, does that game have a lot of books. Yes, it does. And I got to be honest with you, this part of this topic for this video is actually prompted by the graphic that they showed off on the Warhammer community site just recently. I don't have it pulled up, but they were talking about the new Necromunda game that they're going to be talking about, which is called Ashen Wastes, Ashen Reaches, Ashen something. I don't know. And it's basically a game that takes place between the hives. So you got this hive over here and this hive over here. You got a bunch of gangers and, I don't know, millions of people, billions of people, whatever. But there's space in between the hives where it's just all gross. You don't want to go there. But people go there. And anyway, so the point of the game is that. And in the kind of talk about it, they haven't even showed the cover of the game or really explained what it was. But they let off with like, we're going to release a box, and then it's just going to be books after books after books, off into infinity, over the horizon. Like, that's what the illustration looked like. It was a box with no cover art that just had the name on it. And then it said 2022, and there was a line going off into the distance, into the dark. And then it was just book, 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 book. And I'm like, it's a little tone deaf since you guys... Anyway, so we got that to look forward to. Or not, as it turns out, as far as not looking forward to it. I'm not... Like, I like Necromunda, I really do, and I thought this new thing at first, I'm like, oh, Gorka Morka, maybe? And I'm like, well, maybe not. Still don't know, frankly, but I do know that there'll be a lot of books for it. It's interesting they've led with that. There's going to be a lot of books for this. What's it about? I haven't told you yet, but there's going to be a lot of books for it. I'm not real cool with that. Let's see here. Why do they have to be physical books? In 20 years, I predict GW will be the last company of any type in the world trying to sell magazines. Well, yeah. Like, they did a digital White Dwarf for a while, and they stopped. Do you remember that? I swear to God, they made a digital White Dwarf for a while. And then they were like, nah. Yeah, I don't know what it is either. Let's see here. Speaking of crypto and NFTs, I can't believe Atari Teenage Riot have come out selling NFTs and started taking ANCAP stuff. I remember the band Atari Teenage Riot, but I don't know anything else about what... I don't know what that rest of that meant. Sorry. Also, Atari, like the video game companies, also started selling, or saying they're going to sell NFTs, but they're called GFTs because they're gifts. And so you basically are buying an NFT and you don't know what's in it, and then you send it to a friend, and then they open it up, and then they have something. Yeah. Anyway. Looking forward to mashing up the last war with the RPG Never Going Home. Just looking for that gnarly cocktail of nightmare fuel. That's a fun turn of phrase, gnarly cocktail of nightmare fuel. That sounds well done. I'm not a huge fan of larger companies doing Kickstarters, Redgrass Games, Scale Color. Yeah, I mean, Cool Mini or not, you might have heard of them. They just did another Kickstarter that was, I don't know, $78 billion or whatever. Okay, that's maybe a little high. With a Marvel license. I mean, really? Did you think that Marvel Zombicide wasn't going to sell? They're like, well, we better do a Kickstarter just in case. No, of course not. That's not the case at all. They just want the money now as opposed to when they actually produce it and sell it. So there's that. Yeah, that's another reason I don't like Kickstarter generally either. Again, if you're a small company and you're like, we need the money to be able to buy the artwork, to do the thing, to buy the tooling and the R&D and stuff like that, and we're going to make a thing, great, not a problem. But if you're like, well, we just don't want to set up a pre-order system on our own website, so we'll just use Kickstarter instead. It'll be fine. And okay, I mean, you can do that, but I don't think it's a great idea. It's books all the way down. I think I said that maybe last night on stream. I think I did, yeah. My husband and I have been interested in Necromunda for a while, but the difficulty of getting into it is just so intimidating. I don't want to jump on another book train. Yeah. Oh, and there's a train. Let's see here. I have my old Gorka Morka stuff. 2 books, 1 expansion book. Done. That's how games used to be. Well, that's how most games still are, frankly. But, you know, that's even how Games Workshop games kind of used to be. Let's see here. While I'm looking forward to an Eldari Codex, I'm upset that there's a new Daughters of Cain battle tome. I'm looking forward to Eldari. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I'm upset there's a new Daughters of... Well, I mean, they're always going to make new battle tomes and new codices. But yeah, that'll just keep happening. And it is a bummer, yeah. You know? Let's see here. Hello from Iowa. 28 degrees above today. Feels like a heat wave. I know. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to get slushy here. It's going to be 36 F. It's a lot of Fs. 1-page rules. Simple, fast, fun, and you can use your GW models. Anything else is to work. Yeah. I mean, what I want to do is I want to sit down and I want to... I don't know. I've been thinking about trying to do some sort of... either a battle report or something different. Not a battle report necessarily, but I do want to have some sort of video where I go through and maybe play like 1-page rules and like my thoughts about it as I'm playing or something along those lines, but not too crazy long because it's, you know, I don't know. The only thing that bothers me about 1-page rules, and it's an incredibly tiny nitpick, is I do wish that it wasn't all about just saying, hey, here's an alternative to playing Games Workshop, but you're still going to be playing Games Workshop. You know what I mean? Like all of the army lists and all that stuff, you go, huh, I've never heard of, oh, those guys are Tau. Okay, I get it. You know, you're like, I don't know, I've never heard this name. Oh yeah, that's the Eldar. Like the game is all about like just giving you rules to play with your current miniatures, which is great. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And they do have their own army builder function where if you were like, I have a whole bunch of models from some company that no one's ever heard of or whatever, or I sculpted my own stuff, or I just kit bashed a bunch of weird crap out of all kinds of different parts and I want to do something. I kind of wish that they had some ready-made non-Games Workshop stuff. And I don't mean Star Wars, you know what I mean? Like there are companies out there that do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Starbreach has got stuff in their book for... You read through it and you're like, that's Tau, that's Admech, those are Chaos guys. But then there's also Sith, Jedi. But then there's also stuff in, you know, Starbreach where it's just like Space Rangers, you know, or Nomads or whatever. And they're not necessarily attached to any other property. And I kind of appreciate that if you're just like, let's not even bother with this stuff if I don't want to. If I have a bunch of cool models, I don't want to have to say, well, I guess I'll use the rules for Adeptus Mechanicus. You know what I mean? You can do that, great, but I also, without having to build stuff, I do wish that they would come out, and maybe they have. I'm a part of the Patreon for 1-page rules, but I guess I haven't looked crazy close at it. I know they have an army builder, so you can like actually make your own figures, not shapes, but make your own stats, your own army stuff for whatever models you want. But I kind of wish they had some pre-made non-Games Workshop analogies? No, amalgams? Whatever. Anyway, I don't want every game out there to be just basically, hey, you can use your GW models to play our game. That's what yeah. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, I'm all completely on board with one-page rules. Love the artwork. I think it's very, very interesting. I really do like it. And the fact that they're also releasing models and stuff like that as STLs, and it's a Patreon, and it's just like everything about it I dig. I just wish that they would edge a little bit more into like, well, what if we made some some stuff that wasn't just basically Games Workshop? You know what I mean? That would be kind of cool. Let's see here. I can't do digital. I tried, but I really prefer physical books. And there's nothing wrong with that, but do you prefer 30 physical books? Or maybe 2? You know, see what I'm saying? Like, that's part of the issue as well. Like, I was talking a little bit about this on Friday when I was streaming on Twitch. And Luton, if you're familiar with Luton on YouTube, big, huge creator on YouTube, talks all about lore. And he comes into the chat from time to time. He's a nice guy. And he's like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it. He's like, but I really do love going through all the lore. It's kind of my thing. And I'm like, I get that. And to be perfectly frank, they could also release those books as lore books, like, separately. But, and again, you don't need to buy all these books. They can release books all day long, and you don't need to buy them. But there are some, if you want to play the game, specifically if you want to play even close to competitively, some of them are kind of required. I need the main rulebook. I need a codex. If I'm a Space Marine player of a certain flavor, I also need a supplemental codex. Blood Angels, Space Wolves, etc. You probably need whatever this year's, whatever you call it, chapter approved is, right? And now you're starting to see some other stuff that you're like, well, there's new rules for this army, so if you play that army, you need this weird book that we just put out that's got, and so spreading all that stuff out into all these different books so that you have to buy more books if you want all the things is, I don't know. I'm off that boat, but honestly, it's not even the book thing for me necessarily. It's more just that I don't want to play army games anymore. Like with Warcry, admittedly, you could technically, I guess, bring 6 books to a game of Warcry, but I don't know why you would. You need the core book, and then you need one of the 4 books that will work with your army, whether it's order, death, destruction, or chaos. So let's say I was playing my Bone Daddies, my OCR Bone Reapers, not this past Saturday, yesterday, but last Saturday before that. So I needed my core book, I needed the death book, and I think that was literally about it. Soon, Tome of Champions book, because there'll probably be points changes and stuff like that in there. To be fair, I could just take a marker and write it in the books, but still I would need but then there's also, I don't know, Battle Scribe. So Tome of Champions, there's other stuff in there as well. One of the big things that's going to be in Tome of Champions, which I think is cool, the new Tome of Champions, is they're going to put in stats for all of the Warhammer Underworlds warbands that they have produced, including the Sepulchral Guard, which I can kind of say now sometimes, and the Crab Guy, and all those different warbands that they've produced for the last 5 years or whatever for Warhammer Underworlds, Beastgrave, Shadespire, Night Vault, Dire Chasm, etc. Now all of those, you can bring those models into your Warcry warband, and all the stats will be in the Tome of Champions book, which is cool. But anyway, my point is that I wish that there were less books. And I like books, but, my wife really likes books, but I just wish that there weren't as many required. Anyway, there's my story. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's see here. They need to stop releasing books with rules that they are just going to change in a week. I feel like some of that is maybe just because of, again, global shipping. But again, I don't think that you should release a book that changes rules that were in a book that was released within the last year. Call me a rebel, but I think that's the case. But I know that some of what's happened recently with certain books are because this book came out way late, and then they had to move this book to release sooner, and then all of a sudden there was like this real short window where these rules were good, and then this thing came out and screwed them up, or whatever. And in a normal, perfect world, back in 2019, that probably wouldn't have happened as much. But I think that even that amount of time, if in a perfect world, is still, they need to... I remember back in 5th edition when you were lucky if you got 3 codices in a year. There are times I don't know that that's any worse. Honestly, when I first started playing 5th edition Tau, my book was from, I think, 4th edition, and was 4th edition until I left Tau and then moved over to Chaos, and then that book, I think, was maybe 4th edition as well, and by that point, I think we were getting into 6th, and then eventually a new Tau Codex Chaos Codex did come out, which I then didn't like as much, because it wasn't as flavorful, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. OPR does have lists for the vermin, I believe they're pronounced, the rats, and the dwarves for Mantic. I've not seen that. I wonder if somebody made those on the side, or if that's cool though. I'm glad to hear it. I've really enjoyed Warcry. I can't wait to bring in Crag as Ravagers. Yeah. Is One Page Rules their own version, or is it like a handy GW accurate cheat sheet? It's its own game. So One Page Rules is the name of the company, and initially it was just One Page Rules. It was basically they made their own version of 40K kind of that just fit on a single page. I think both sides, but still it was a single piece of paper. Now they have expanded to the point where they have their own games. They make a game called Grimdark, which is basically 40K, but not. I mean, it's a new rule set, but it's designed to be played more streamlined and quickly and this kind of stuff. And it's not, but it's from $0 to $5 depending on which version you want as a PDF. Then there's Grimdark Firefight, which is basically kind of Kill Team-ish, Kill Team-esque. Then there's Age of Fantasy, which is their Age of Sigmar kind of game, and then there's Age of Fantasy Skirmish, I believe. There's also FTL, which is a spaceship game. And there's a couple other ones, I think, in there, too. So, yeah, they're all a bunch of different games. But if you just go to onepagerules.com, you can find out more. And then, like I said, they're also now releasing entire lines of STL files so that you can literally get the rules and the models, if you've got the ability to 3D print, all from one place and crank out your stuff. And it's pretty cool. The narrative is what brings me into Warhammer. I should be able to imagine more and care less about points and all that jazz. I mean, narrative, if you want to imagine, they're not going to stop you from imagining yet. I wish I could have done a punch-in zoom there. That would have been pretty cool. But no. Yeah. But, yeah, that's the thing. I was just talking with somebody yesterday about that. How, give me a relatively lighter rule set and then let me make the narrative and the story and that kind of stuff in my miniature game. We were talking about narrative, because I kind of talked about that a little bit in the Friday video about being streamlined versus crunchy and that kind of narrative and stuff. And so we were talking a little bit about that online, and it was a situation of having games that are starting to miniature games that are kind of straddling the line over not into RPGs. I'm not going to have to go talk to the tavern owner to find out what's going on in town, but working in campaign style games and having maybe something that happened in this one, game 4, have a bigger effect in something that happens in game 9, or something along those lines. And the less I have to worry about the crunch of the rules, the more I can think about the story about what's going on with this and that and the other thing. And so that kind of jazz. It's starting to get sunny outside. I think GW is putting underworlds to pasture, says Ariel. I hadn't thought of it, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. If they're going to put it to pasture, then to say, hey, look what all you can do with all these models. Why don't you play the Warcry? Why not? That makes sense. It's a possibility. Yeah. Suggestions for a liquid brushable primer for those of us that can't airbrush or Relican. I like the MiG One Shot Gray. It's awesome, but too dark for contrast paints. MiG One Shot White is like soup. Sounds like a terrible, terrible soup. Yeah. Don't eat paint soup. I would probably tell you to try Monument Hobbies. I like Monument Hobbies. I use their black primer all the time. I do fire it through my airbrush, but I have been told by multiple people. I haven't tried it myself yet, and I keep meaning to do so. But from what I understand, there's nothing wrong with brushing it on to a model. You obviously don't want to go crazy heavy with it. I would maybe start by thinning it just a little bit and then brushing it on and then seeing what it does. The way that acrylic paints usually will work is that as they dry, they have a tendency to tighten. So they'll kind of tighten. You'll put it on there and be like, whoops, I kind of like really messed up all of his little, the little links on his chainmail loincloth there. But as the paint dries, it will kind of suck into the little bits there and the little holes in the chainmail or whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I would try that. Monument makes 5 different colors of primer. So they make they make black, they make white, they make a dark neutral gray, they make a dark military green, and they make another color called black brown, which is just basically a very dark brown. I use them through my airbrush all the time. Not the green. I haven't used the green yet. I own it, but I haven't fired it through the airbrush yet. But the rest of the stuff I've used and I've really liked it. So I'm thinking about making a video soon about like, can I paint a model completely without even using an airbrush or spray of any kind? Spoiler alert, yeah, I'm sure I can. But what will it look like in comparison, and how do you need to do it? Because I have a lot of people ask the same question. They're like, I don't have the access to, I live in an apartment. Maybe it's a high upper floor. I can't spray here in the apartment, and I can't just go down to the parking lot or whatever the deal is. And so trying to figure that out. I would take a look at their stuff. It's my favorite primer. Their white primer is my favorite white primer that I've ever used. But if you were going to be doing, honestly, if you were going to be doing like a zenithal and throwing contrast over it, if you just use the black primer and then just dry brush with a makeup brush and a good white paint, probably the white regular paint, the bold titanium white from Monument, that's my favorite white paint as well. It's interesting. They make my favorite white paint and my favorite white primer. The whole reason I got into Monument paints was because I bought a bottle of their white paint, because white's one of the hardest colors to do right, and I brought it home and started working with it, and I was like, oh, yes, and I just bought all the rest of the paints. So, yeah, that would be my suggestion. Let's see here. Squad Hammer Core is super easy, adaptable, and a fun system for skirmishing in pretty much any genre and a mashup of genres. I know I've heard of it. I might have it on my iPad. I might have bought it from Wargame Vault, but I have not played it. Let's see here. Here in Northern Virginia, working on models and enjoying Tabletop Minions. Well, thank you, David. I hope you're having a good Sunday. Let's see here. I wish GW books had rules that were better drafted. We still use D&D books from 5 years ago, which are fully functional. My Age of Sigmar books are half that age and have been completely reworked multiple times. I mean, they've gotten a lot more playtesters in the last probably 5 years. They did not used to have much in the way of outside playtesters, but over the last 5 years, from what I understand, they've added a lot of outside playtesters. Playtesting's... it's a real bear. It's really hard, especially when you take a game and then you throw it against the majority of the players in the world, right? So, like, when you make a game and it has a relatively small player base, you have far fewer people who can find the breaks in it necessarily. Whereas when it's the most popular, tabletop miniature war game in the world, and the majority of the people do play it or whatever, that's when you start to find, oh gosh, yeah, no, these people found out how to break it eventually. It's just I don't know, it's an infinite number of monkeys with the infinite number of typewriters kind of situation, only like in reverse. I don't know. Let's see here. Army Painter Matte White is really good as well, like from the can. I'm trying to think if I've used it. It's been a very long time. I think I did use it a long, long time ago. I don't know that I don't remember my results, but I felt like it was speckly, but it might have been an old can. I hate my airbrush. I only use it rarely. To prime, I use thinned white or black brush down. Works fine for me. I mean, that's your feelings are valid, John. Don't get me wrong. But if you get the chance, I mean, maybe it's a bad airbrush. I don't know. I find that I love my airbrush, but I also constantly keep it wet. It is, well, not when I'm using. Well, it's kind of wet when I'm using it, I guess. But for me, the big thing was you take the main part of the airbrush, the main body of the airbrush, and you take the two nozzles that go in the front. There's a little inside nozzle and a bigger outside nozzle or whatever. Those are the parts that once you get done painting, you drop them into like a jar of water or into whatever, so they stay wet, and they stay in there until the next time that you paint. And then you I've never had a clog in my airbrush. Dry tip sometimes during the airbrushing, like if I've got like a real thick paint that I'm trying to shoot through there and I didn't thin it enough or something like that. Vallejo white primer gave me dry tip a lot, but I've never had a clog because my airbrush, like right now, is downstairs in the basement submerged. So if the paint never dries, it can never clog. You know what I mean? But it could be a bad airbrush as well. I bought one of those little mini handheld compressors that you just screw onto the bottom of your airbrush, and it came with an airbrush, and that airbrush is a total piece of trash. It just barely works. It doesn't even barely work. But when I put my regular airbrush on that little compressor, it works okay. It's pretty good. It's not too bad. Excited to join a live show. Well, thanks, Chan. Cleaning up old Warzone minis for space weirdos. Nice. Some of those old Warzone minis are fun. I've got some real old ones. Well, not real old, but pretty old ones I've got someplace in the basement. Playtesting gets tough, especially when you are filtering feedback. Some of it helps. A lot of it can be noise. Also true. Sure. Age of Sigmar doesn't need more playtesters. It needs at least one proofreader who knows how the game works. Well, I mean, that may be the case as well. I love my airbrushes, but sometimes I hate them. Well, yeah. Who do you recommend for a good white ink? For airbrushing, I'm assuming. What I've used in the past, up until I started using now the Monument white primer, what I used to use was Liquitex acrylic white ink. So Liquitex is the manufacturer, and it's acrylic white ink. The trick is that you have to, before you put it in your airbrush, if you're going to be using it for a zenithal highlight, you have to add some like matte varnish to it as well if you're going to be using contrast paints. If you're not going to be using contrast paints, you may not need to add the matte varnish. The matte varnish is there because contrast paints, something in contrast paints, and I don't know if the new Army Painter speed paints will do this as well, that I haven't tried, but there's something in the contrast paint that will reactivate dried acrylic white ink, or acrylic ink in general, I'm assuming. So you spray your model black with some sort of primer. Then you spray it white, highlight, zenithal, with white acrylic ink. Then maybe you wait a couple of days, and then you come back and you're like, now it's time to start painting with my contrast paints. And you start doing that, and it will reactivate the white, which will then make it start moving around and blending with the colors and stuff you don't want it to do. But if you add some, and there's not a good 3 to 2, 4 to 6, 12 to 9, there's no good ratio in there. I was usually adding, if this is the cup of your airbrush and you're putting in a bit of paint, I'll throw in a couple of drops of matte varnish. That's about it. But that helps to protect it if you're going to be doing that. If you're not going to be using contrast paints, I don't know if it's as more important to add the matte varnish, but yeah, that's the stuff that I've used, is the Liquitex, and I got that from, I think it was from Caleb Wissenbeck. He did a video, might have been on Games Workshop's site actually, but it might have been someplace else. But basically, he was the one that I learned that trick about adding the matte varnish to the white ink when you're going to spray it to do a zenithal, and then try to use some contrast over the top of it later. That's the trick. So, what are your plans for Tabletop Minions Expo? I mean, currently I have a date. I mean, I know numbers are going down on COVID and stuff like that. I'm probably going to call, I'll email. I'll email this week to find out what kind of requirements we're at now. Maybe those requirements will get slightly more lax as the time goes forward. Hopefully they will by June, but probably not. So currently my only thing is I know that I'm going to be requiring proof of vaccination, and we'll probably have to wear masks, but I don't know about that second part, but that first part's going to be sure. I believe, unless the college doesn't, even if the college doesn't require it, I'm going to require it. That's just the way it's going to work. And then I've got to, I guess, probably stand up stuff on the website so people can start submitting some events and jazz like that. This is going to be a real kind of toe back into the pool sort of situation this year. I mean, it's not a huge convention to begin with, but every convention, is a toe back into the pool sort of situation right now. So that's kind of where that's at right now. So yeah, I'll hopefully be able to start posting more about it soon, but like I said, I do need to reach out to the people from the college because the date's penciled in. It's the June 4th and 5th, 2022, at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Grunhagen Conference Center. Grunhagen is spelled with a G. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's going to be happening, and but everything else is sort of up in the air, unfortunately, right now. So we'll see how that goes. I recently experimented with professional-grade, heavy-bodied acrylics, and have since ditched all my other hobby paints. Golden is my new jam. I've seen people using golden lately. That's cool. Dropping the objective markers to get points and uses as asymmetrical goals is a much better way to play 40k. I have an itchy mustache. Let's see here. Headed to Adepticon for the first time this year. Any tips for first-time attendee? Nice. Well... Gosh, I mean, this year's obviously different than other years, so there's that whole thing as well. So bring plenty of masks and all that jazz. If you get the chance, sign up for, especially as a first-time attendee, if you get the chance, sign up for like a class or maybe even a demo or something like that. I don't know if you want to go completely head in and be like, oh, hey, cool, I'm going to sign up for the 40K championship, because like that's all day, at least one day, and if you make a cut of a certain, then it's going to be basically almost all day of a second day too. So that's kind of that can cut down on your walking around looking at stuff and talking to people time, which is important. I think that's one of the most important things about Adepticon. But if you're really into painting, it's one of the best places in the world to get a lot of different people, the access to a lot of different people to take some amazing classes. I don't know I don't know, but I have a suspicion there may be fewer overseas teachers coming over this year just because of everything, but maybe not. I don't know that actually for sure. Also, this year is going to be the return of the Golden Demon to America, which is to say there hasn't been a Golden Demon competition in the United States since 2013. And so this will be the Golden Demon. And it was going to be Golden Demon 2020, because that was when it was going to come back. Well, think about how many people were painting for 2020 and then went like, oh crap, well there's no 20. Okay, well we'll wait till 2021, and then painted some more stuff, and then 2021 didn't happen, and now there's going to be some real hot fire in the Golden Demon case at this convention. It's going to be real cool to see, I think. So that'll be very interesting. Let's see here. Tried Plaguebearer Flesh and Beltan Wash on a white primed zombie, and it turned out awesome for zombie flesh. Nice. I doubt I'll be at TMX this year. We'll have to do telepresence. It'd be cool to get one. Have you ever seen those things where it's like an iPad on top of a stick, which is on top of like a, what do you with those, like a Segway, And then you can be like someplace else and be steering it around and just kind of, and then that'd be sort of fun. I don't have one of those. I don't think you can buy them. Maybe you can. Let's see here. Have you thought about coordinating with other Twitch hobbyists for a streamed convention? Well, I mean, I've done a bunch of that, honestly, in the early days of the pandemic. I was working with the folks from Board Game Geek, actually, and then I was doing, like, streams with them for virtual... So they did a con called Virtual Games Con, or Virtual Gaming Con, something like that, VGC. They also did a con that they partnered with Dice Tower with. Both of those I did live Twitch streams where I was teaching people how to paint board game minis easily and quickly with, rattle can out in the driveway to prime, and then use some big fat makeup brush to do some like zenithal, and then here let's use some transparent colors and stuff like that. Speed paint kind of stuff to get all of your zombicide zombies painted, things like that. Excuse me. I also did virtual Gen Con in 2020. I did virtual San Diego Comic-Con. I think I did virtual Essen, which is the one in Germany. I did a bunch of that stuff working with the folks from Board Game Geek. They're great guys. But yeah, I don't know about. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the trick is that you can watch all of us pretty much any time that we're on, and I don't know what the difference would be between just a bunch of us deciding to stream roughly at the same time or in series on a single weekend day versus just the days that we currently stream anyway. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm glad to work with folks on virtual conventions, and if it gets more people learning about how to paint their board game minis, then great. But I don't know that I would ever go to a virtual convention. Well, go. You know what I mean? I just it's nothing wrong with it. It's just I don't know. I guess I might watch parts of it later. I don't know. It's a weird thing trying to figure out the virtual convention or the streamed convention thing. I know people have been trying to do it even back before the pandemic. I know there was one that was trying to get off the ground just because it would be easier, then people wouldn't have to travel and stuff like that, or people who can't travel maybe. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. Regarding the title, do you know McDonald's is actually a real estate company? Yes. Perhaps Games Workshop is just an elaborate front for a book publisher. Maybe. Could be. Let's see here. If I wasn't collecting World War I and World War II in 15mm, I would go to Gaddis Gaming for all of my miniature needs. There you go. I've bought stuff from Gaddis before. A really cool... it does this a lot. An armored car I bought at TMX several years ago. I crowdfunded the not Shattered Crown, that's the World War I one. Fallen Empire. I did that one and got 2 small skirmish forces and all that kind of stuff, and the books and the cards and all that jazz. So that's very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Per your topic, GW box game Necromunda currently had 13 books. I think they just missed the definition of box game, but I do still like the game. Yeah, no, it's a box game with a whole bunch of books. Or maybe it's just a whole bunch of books with a box game attached to it. Hard to say. I don't know. Rick and I had already talked about an iPad on a remote control / robot car. There you go. I mean, but I swear they make those. I don't know that they're cheap, obviously, but I do swear that they make those. I've seen those at a convention before. Like, they were for sale, or there was at a booth. It wasn't just like walking around the booth while walking. You know what I mean? Rolling. Let's see here. 40K needs a proper design rules like VDR for fortifications. I don't know what VDR is. I want rules that support custom out of production and conversion built terrain. I mean, everything kind of does that. Well, maybe not, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, it just comes down to being able to agree with your opponent on whether this is supposed to be this kind of terrain or that kind of terrain or that sort of stuff. The other thing, too, is to also, in my opinion, have rule sets that don't make it so important. I think that's actually a big deal. The concept of like, well, am I here or you are? Well, you're like 3 millimeters off. And, you got to touch this guy's touching the ground. Just make it so that like basically, is this thing touching that thing? Cool, and it gets those benefits. And if it turns out that you feel like you can kind of cheese it a little bit by making this one guy does it matter that much? That's the trick. If the game comes down to whether or not you were a millimeter or 2 off this way or that way, I don't know that I want to play that game. That's why I got out of the X-Wing. Yeah, Star Wars X-Wing. Just because I can't tell you how many times like I've seen at tournaments and things like that. And even when we were just playing at the shop, if I'm playing somebody I don't know, they'd be like, "Oh, that's your A-wing is just like I'm a millimeter outside of your firing arc," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." So that's why I only played with friends then, because we were all just like there to have a good time generally, and we weren't really there trying to win, and that's a big thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's again, if you're playing competitively, that's when you have to have crunch because there has to be something about the rules. But I think the most fun of playing games like this, especially because it's a tabletop game and you can make changes to everything on the fly, is being able to make changes to everything on the fly. That's the best part about it. Just be like, what if we did this? What if we changed this? What if we did that? I like that. That's the thing I like to do. A virtual convention would work best in VR. You could show off your wares and people could actually stop by and talk to you, and you could even play the miniature game right there. That seems like a long ways off, like a long, long ways off. There was a video going around about some sort of VR shopping experience that, like, I guess either somebody made trying to sell the concept to Walmart, or Walmart commissioned someone to make this concept. And it looked super chunky, because you're like moving around in VR and you're grabbing things off the shelf and putting them in your cart and doing this and doing that. And I'm like, cool. While you were getting your headset, all set up, I ordered 4 things off of the Walmart app and they'll be here tomorrow, or what, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like a solution to a problem that doesn't exist right now. I know a lot of people are super hot and bothered about this concept of the metaverse, but I'm not convinced in any way, shape, or form. I mean, VR is cool for gaming and certain things like that. It's even cool for like being able to maybe check out like cool like museum experiences and stuff like that. I bought Google used to make this thing called Google Cardboard, and you ordered it for like $10, and it was just a flat pack cardboard doohickey that you would fold up, follow the instructions and origami, and then you'd slide your phone into it, and then you downloaded the Google Cardboard app, and then you looked through it and like a ViewMaster, but it was using the accelerometer and all that kind of stuff, so it knew, and then it was kind of like VR, except you had to hold it to your head. And it was pretty cool. And I remember like messing around looking at them, like, oh, there's like a cool Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton at some, I don't know, London, I think. I think it was one of the London museums. I forget exactly which one, but it was just like, and then you would, basically like push the little button and it would show you a different scene. And it was cool. And it was kind of 3-dimensional because it had like the, 2 eyes thing. And I remember at one point I like clicked again, and I was like in this weird warehouse. And I'm just looking around. There's like 2 kind of guys over here, and they are working on something, and it's on a card table. Just a little, I don't know, 3 foot by 3 foot card table, and it's just 2 guys in work shirts or whatever, and they're doing something on a card table, and I'm like, well, I was just in a museum with a giant dinosaur. What's going on in here? So I just started looking around this room, and then I turn 180, and there's a space shuttle. And evidently it's some museum, I think in Portland, where one of the oldest space shuttles, when they decommissioned the space shuttles, some of the space shuttles ended up at different museums. And so this was the space shuttle like parked inside this hangar at the museum. But when you first come into the scene, it's behind you. But it was incredibly startling to just be like, where am I? What am I looking at here? There's 2 guys, they're working on something and all that stuff. And you turn around and it's just a space shuttle, like not just parked, just sitting there. And like those kinds of experiences I think are very cool in VR. But I don't need VR to go buy cat litter. I could just click a button. Actually, I go to the store and I scoop the stuff myself. But you know what I'm saying. Let's say cat food. We buy that online very frequently because our local store frequently doesn't have the stuff that we want in stock. I think AR is actually going to be a bigger deal than VR. The augmented reality, where you're still able to see what's going on around you. You're not just putting on a headset and then laying in your living room and whatever. But I don't know. Eventually, maybe we'll see. Metaverse isn't something designed to help the consumer. It is something designed to help companies. Yeah, well, that's very true too. The precision of X-Wing can be fun if you are on the winning side of precision. Otherwise, you can feel like you made a mistake. Yeah, that's true too. It's a problem that doesn't exist if you live in the US or the UK, but for the rest of the world, tapping into the conventions and the events going on there is basically impossible. I mean, I understand that is true. As far as, like, I have never been to the UK, so I like to watch what's going on at Salute, and things like that a little bit just from social media and things. I don't know. Like, I appreciate, and this is interesting too, I appreciate when, like, Beasts of War on Tabletop now, as they're referred to, would go to, like, Salute and walk around and look at all the booths and show you, like, footage. Like, they would walk by each booth and be like, okay, and this is what they're selling over here, okay, and then we'll go to the next one. And I like that stuff. I know from doing convention coverage on my own channel, it gets the worst views. Like, evidently, me and about 28 other people are the only people in the world who care about that and watch it. Because I will if you, just for funsies, go to my channel and go to the videos page that shows all the videos, not just the front channel, but you click the little video tab. And then there's a thing over here where you can kind of order by, like, new and popular. And then if you just do the popular and then just scroll down to the bottom, that's where all my convention videos are, because people don't want to watch it, and I don't know why. I love watching that stuff because it's kind of like being able to poke your head through a hole and go, hey, that's cool, what's going on in here? And you can see what's going on at conventions that you've never been to. So I get that, totally. I don't know that I need to do it in VR, frankly, but just watching a video of the cool stuff would be neat. When I was first working for Beasts of War, like one of the first years, and I went to Gen Con, they were like, okay, so what we want you to do is we want you to go to the vendor hall and do a vendor hall walk. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, just go through and shoot each booth and just talk about it and be like, hey, this is what they're selling here and all that kind of stuff, and just go through there and all that. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. And they're like, why not? And I was like, it's not gonna, the size is not what you're used to. Like, it's not. And so then I did a short video where I showed a little bit. I had the guy that I was with, and he followed me, and I kind of talked, and I did like one row. And I'm like, that's one row. And then I kind of pointed, and then he turned the camera, and then you saw that the room went off to the horizon, basically, because the Gen Con dealer room is massive. And then I sent them just that video to take a look at, and they were like, oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, it's not, that would be a 3-hour video. Because honestly, when you go to Gen Con, when you're walking through looking at stuff, it takes me usually a good portion of the time that the dealer hall is open, even on the first day, to try to see almost everything, and you always miss stuff. Because it's never a perfect grid. When you're walking back and forth, and there's always like a big booth in the middle that's selling, I don't know, Pokemans or some junk like that or whatever. And then you're like, well, now I have to go this way and this way. And then you miss the stuff on the bottom part. Yeah. If they would just make it a nice, perfect grid and never change anything, I would like it a lot better, thanks. I know that's not how the world works, but there you go. VR is awesome for digital museums. Yeah, that's, I think, really cool. I always felt AR would mash all type of tabletop games. Absolutely, I think it will as well. Warning, VR is how people become part of the Matrix. Ooh. Let's see here. Has anyone checked out Black Star Initiative before? The video I checked out was stop motion miniatures action. Very cool. Nope, I haven't heard of it. That's kind of cool. I don't want to have to require an electronic device to play a tabletop game. Keep it old school. Yeah, no, I understand that. I did a video a long time ago about AR because there was a game called The Machines where you basically you held up your phone and sort of looked through your phone, and you'd see the tabletop that you were like, the desk or the whatever you were playing on, but it would put in all the terrain and the vehicles. And it wasn't, unfortunately, like turn-based like a tabletop game. It was more like an RTS, a real-time strategy game. But it was still super cool to get down real low and look under this thing and the overhang, and there's a ship there and this kind of stuff. And I like that concept. But it's not. I mean, a lot of people in the video were like, "Well, why don't you just play a video game?" And I get that. I think that I like the concept of it. If it was going to be more like a tabletop game, then it's just like a tabletop game where you can carry it all in your pocket, and you and your friend could play against each other. Because that was the other thing cool that was cool about that particular game called The Machines, was that it was multiplayer. So I could be looking through my phone, and you could be looking through your phone, and we're both looking at the same table. And then and all that kind of stuff. And that was cool. And it would be nice to also be able to, like, again, it wouldn't be a replacement. In my opinion, it would be a, like, hey, me and this other guy at work, we get together and we play 40K during lunch. And you're like, how do you play a game of 40K at lunch? Well, we just, we have this pocket thing and we play, and then we save it, and then we come back the next day and we pick up where we left off. But there's no actual stuff there. That would be kind of cool. I don't know that Games Workshop would ever go with that, but some other company could be like, hey, we'll make a game and make it like this. And, but again, then the question starts to become, why don't you just play it as a video game? But it's a different interface. It's a different experience, I think, Let's see here. I loved your coverage of Valhalla. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, I like watching convention coverage, but most people don't. GW got too many books and they're way too expensive than they should be. They do seem to be more expensive than they should be. Now, again, with recent troubles and getting stuff shipped, I mean, right now shipping not only is slow, but also incredibly expensive. The way that big manufacturers ship things is they basically rent a shipping container. So the shipping container, they rent the shipping container shows up at the facility where the manufacturing happens. The manufacturers load all the junk into the shipping container. Company takes shipping container to docks, puts it on boat, float across the ocean, comes to some place, sits there, customs, yada yada, then gets taken off, gets put onto a truck, taken someplace, stuff gets pulled out, sent to distribution, whatever. That's generally how it works. But what you're paying for is the rental of that container and then the trip that it takes. And it used to be that a 53-foot normal, or maybe 48-foot, I don't remember, 48 to 53-foot container generally was about... When I talked to John from Monster Fight Club at Gen Con, I think he said that he used to get containers between $5,000 and $8,000. And that includes the moving and around and all that jazz, right? So you rent a container, get it filled full of all your stuff and shipped to where you want it to be, and it's about $5,000 to $8,000. He says now, if you can get one, if you can even find one, and this was again back in September, the most recent one he paid for was $22,000 or $24,000. So all those Kickstarters, a lot of Kickstarters that happened in 2019 went probably in the red because they originally had planned on spending $5,000 to $8,000 for a shipping container, and now when the product is actually done and they're going to ship it, they can't find a shipping container for it. So that, profit margin gets cut completely and all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure that a lot of that's happening also with the printing that GW is doing as well. So that's a part of it as well. They're not going to just eat that. They're going to shift, it onto us. So that's why we pay $50 for the, Kill Team book, which is a soft cover, or $50 for the Kill Team Compendium, again, a soft cover. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. It's because of that. Now, that being said, if and when things ever get better, do you think the prices are going to go back down again? No, probably not. Very, very, very unlikely. I recall when GW had complex rules for which mech leg you hit. That kind of thing might make the books worthwhile, but when it's mind-bending rules that I don't understand, then I'm nah. Yeah, no, I understand. That's kind of the point of this past Friday's video about crunch versus streamlining. Having to buy 200 worth of books to play the game and then more for the miniatures makes it difficult to get in the game when there are so many other games which you don't have to. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the thing that... The important part of that, in my opinion, is that you're right. If I don't have to buy as many books, I can buy more miniatures. Now, for some companies, they're like, great. Other companies are like, yeah, but we make more margin on books than we do on miniatures. Depends on how they get things done. I honestly would think that the margin would be better on the plastics that GW sells because they're producing them themselves. But evidently not. I don't know. Or maybe they're just double dipping on both of them, and that's fine too. I mean, it's, again, all of this stuff is them being a big, huge multi-billion-dollar corporation. That's what multi-billion-dollar corporations do, is they try to keep making more money. That's their job. So this is not the employees being mean or anything like that. It's just the structure of being that big. Like me and Vince, we have a very small little company, and we can choose to leave money on the table, and we do, and it's fine. But again, we also have 2 other jobs. So it's not, feeding our kids, which don't exist. But you know what I'm saying. Yeah, so I don't know. That being said, I do still think that they're making way too many books. And that is, like I said, I'm not here for that many books anymore. I'm a big fan of games that take up maybe 1 book. I know, it's weird. It's crazy. Write your own rules, play with your own toys the ways that you want. You're not wrong, JP Got Rockets. Rules are merely agreements between 2 parties. All you need is one friend to play your rules with you. The GW ecosystem is fractured. I mean, it's kind of self-fractured just in that there's so many different games, and I'm not against there being... I don't want the old days where you either played Fantasy or 40K, and it was probably 40K. You know what I mean? That being said, even within a specific game, I play Necromunda. Cool. Which of the 17 books do you use? That becomes, again, a fracturing issue. And container falls off boat into ocean or is part of a train heist, and the whole process starts all over again. That's also true. Yeah. No, I've been told by manufacturers many times that if something starts to leak in one of those containers when it sits on a boat, before they get out of international water, before they leave international waters and come into the country's waters of which they're going to be delivering, they will make a decision and maybe push an entire stack of containers right off of the ship into the ocean so that they don't have to go through customs, and customs is like, what is that is leaking down the side? And they're like, what? I don't know. And so yeah, or sometimes even just big storms. That happens too. So yeah, those containers can be lost in lots of different ways. Generally not like just misplaced, because they got numbers all over them, and a lot of them, I don't know what, well, I know with semis at least, or semi-trailers, most of them have GPS in them now these days, from what I understand. Because that was the case back when I was a security guard way back in the day, so I'm sure it's even more now. But the shipping containers, I don't know if they have GPS in them or not, but they are covered in numbers generally, so you can at least look at them and go boop, and then you've got some sort of tablet, and you're like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be over there. Aren't you a cat dad? No, I'm a cat friend. We'll say that. I did not actually sire any of these cats. That would be weird. I don't know how that would work. I backed a Mythic Kickstarter in spring 2020, and I'm concerned shipping costs will trickle down and affect mini quality. I mean, I guess it's possible. Maybe that they have to reduce the quality of the actual plastic. Like, the sculpts are the sculpts, but I mean, you could reduce the costs on the molds by making the detail frankly softer. So that yeah, I mean, honestly, if you were like, I need to figure out a way to make up this unexpected rise in shipping costs, it could be worse molds and worse plastic. That's a possibility. But yet you're still technically fulfilling the Kickstarter within the letter of the law. So there's that. I don't know anything about if they've done that over there or anything like that. I was kind of interested in that Reichbusters game. Yeah, I think that was Mythic, right? Reichbusters. I was super interested. Well, not super interested. I was pretty interested when I first saw the molds or the sculpts that they had several years ago. And then I was at Gen Con this year, and they had like the last of the boxes, and they were like, hey, we got a special, we got these boxes. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm like, oh, it's a decent price, neat. I'm like, do you have the models here that I can look at? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, well, can I look at them on the back of the box? And they're like, no, they're not on the back of the box. And I'm like, so you made a box that doesn't have any pictures of the models on it, is what my thought was. I'm like, huh. Now I understand this is a Kickstarter box, so it's not a retail box that sits in the store. You would be completely insane to make a retail box that does not have a picture of what's inside, generally, as a company of that size. You know, like, you're a small little company like me, if we decided to make a game, even then we would put pictures of the models on the box if we were going to like sell models in a box somehow, if we expected it to go on people's shelves at a store. But yeah, so I just was like, oh, well, okay, cool. I mean, I have a vague memory of what the stuff looked like. I think at one point he like held up his phone and showed me the Kickstarter, and I'm like, it's just tiny dots everywhere of like how many miniatures are in there, and I was kind of like, eh. And then I thought to myself, I don't need any more miniatures right now. Actually, I'm good, or at least not as many. I don't need them on spec. Let's say that. Like, if I see a miniature that I'm like, I have a very specific use for this, great. But I'm like, these are cool miniatures. I'm going to probably dial that back a bit. Some future archaeologists will have fun trawling through all the lost shipping containers at the bottom of the ocean preserved in the freezing dark waters. I know. I've thought about that myself. I'm like, how many cool things are down there? Maybe the fish are playing 40K. No, I don't think that's the case. I've mostly stopped buying GW products in favor of my 3D printer and one-page rule system. Their Patreon is one of the best gaming investments I've made since my D&D books. Yeah, we were talking about one-page rules before. Absolutely. Cat Butler. To some degree, sure. Let's see here. I mean, I wish I could get my cats on my insurance, says moderator Matt. Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. Well, our insurance is lousy. Anyway. I heard that Legion lost a U.S. release when the container holding the B-2 battle droids went overboard. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear that specifically, but it is a thing that happens, as it turns out, more often than we would think. So, yeah. I'm a big fan of Warcry. I hope they don't muck it up soon. I like the customization of your team is pretty nice. I know. That's the thing one of the things I like the most about Warcry is that it is very just like 1,000 points. Use all the models you want in this group. I mean, one of them needs to be a leader. that's about it. You know, I mean, like, you can't be all leaders. I don't think you can have a hero too, but nonetheless, my point is that that's another thing I kind of don't dig too much about. Well, it's okay. In Kill Team, the way that you do the list building now, it'll be like you can take one of these and one of these, and they're not putting points in there anymore. You know that everything comes out to have points. They just don't want to share the points with you. It's not like they're trying to keep it from you. They're just like, well, let's just make it so it's pointless. Well, not pointless, but without points. But it is a situation where I think, you know, behind the curtain, they're still like, this guy's worth roughly these points, and these guys are worth roughly these points. It'll be very interesting to see what they need to do down the road if they decide to start changing these point lists. Or, sorry, army lists. So instead of saying you get to build 10 guys and this is how you do it, are they going to just be like, oh, now you have to build 9 guys? Because the granularity in points means that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you make some changes. Like in Warcry, there will be new points coming out in the Tome of Champions, I'm sure of it. And they will tweak like this guy and say, oh, he was 80 points and now he's 85 points, you know, because he's a little tougher than he ought to be or whatever at 80 points, so we're going to bump him up to 85 points. So then now you're looking at your list and going, well, now my list is 3 over or 5 over or whatever the deal is. Maybe you were dead on. And so you have to kind of figure that out. But just when it comes down to, the Death Corps of Krieg list is 10 models, and you can have one leader, and you can have, these gunners, but you have to only choose 2, and then the rest of these 7 guys or whatever, that kind of thing. If you want to change it, it sounds like they're going to end up probably having to change the stats. If this guy's overpowered, it's harder to just be like, well, we'll just change his points, and then you figure it out. When I'm handing you the list and saying, this is what you get, and here are a few choices. If you want to make real fine-tuning on list builds as a company, especially if you're dealing with a lot of the competitive scene, it's going to be a lot harder to do that in Kill Team than it is in any other game where they use points, because you can't just be like, well, we'll just change the points and then you figure it out. We've given you this list with just a couple of choices. Now we have to change the list because the list is overpowered. I think that's going to be a real problem, especially, like I said, in the competitive scene. Superman plays 40k. I guess Aquaman can too. Oh, good point. I hadn't thought of that. Did you decide to have an intervention for GW in their book issues? I mean, I don't know that I can. I mean, they're not gonna. I don't know that they watch the show. Let's just say that. That's fine. But I don't know. I kind of wanted to talk about that stuff, the book stuff, and how, again, like I said, a lot of this was sparked by the announcement of the new Necromunda game, the Ashen Wastes, Ashen Pants, whatever the Ashen something. I forget exactly what it's called, and they haven't even finished the box yet, so they're just showing like a mock-up of the box, and then you saw the illustration if you saw it on Warhammer community website. It was like the box, and then there's this arrow going off in the distance to 2022, and then it was just silhouettes of books off into the horizon, and I was like, I almost thought somebody else, because I saw that on Twitter first, and I thought it was a meme. I thought somebody was just like, oh, hey, check this out. And then, no, it was just their graphic that they had made. So there's that. Yeah. You can never have enough fishmen. That's true. That is true. Containers in the Ocean is just marketing for a new Deepkin release. Oh, there you go. I'm going to my first 40k game soon. Any tips? Bring a decent amount of dice. Depending on what army you have, you may need, like, orcs definitely need a lot of dice. So bring a lot of 6-siders. I would also tell you, if you can, bring something to put your dice in. And I don't mean like a dice bag, but something to throw the dice in. I can't tell you how many times somebody gets a little crazy with their dice throwing, like, on the board that we're playing in, and knocks over several models or something like that. And that's a bummer. So if you've got a dice tray or even like the lid to a box or something like that you could kind of off to the side shake your dice and be like, oh, okay, cool, as opposed to throwing them directly on the table where all the stuff is, that's maybe something to think about too. Imagine relying on overboard containers for your rulebook updates. Might be right on the schedule. Yeah, there you go. Wanted to get in Necromunda as I love the original, but all the books for the new one killed my enthusiasm. I think that's done that to a lot of folks, honestly. I wonder what primer undersea Cthulhu creatures use on their minis to get a good base coat. Do they Xanathol? I mean, do you need to when it's that dark? That's a good question. I hadn't thought of that. GW should consolidate books like Privateer Press, put out a handful of books a year, and each new book has entries for each faction. I don't think that they could because there's so many factions. Like 40K has got like what, 25 or 28 factions, something crazy like that. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're talking about with the War Machine model. Basically, what would happen would be this: is you would get like a new edition of the core rule book, and then they would usually release some sort of book that would have stats for. To be perfectly frank, they've gone to the app. Like, they use the app a lot now, and so I think that's a smart move. Now, for them specifically, I got something in my eye. Sorry. For Privateer Press specifically, from everything I understand, they're not necessarily doing gangbusters these days. And so the concept of moving the majority of their new release and all of that stuff to the app makes a ton of sense, because it's not then shipping and warehousing and distribution and then having to take returns if people aren't buying the stuff and like all that physical stuff, right? You know, I don't know a ton about how they're doing these days. I know that Riot Quest game, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about that, and people seem to dig that. Amazingly, not yesterday, but last Saturday when I was at the local game shop with Sam and we were playing Warcry, there were two guys there playing War Machine, which I haven't seen anyone playing War Machine in my town in forever. So that was interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know Games Workshop would probably never go total app. Wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Well, yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. Hard to say. GW should feel like Blockbuster or Tower Records did in the 2000s right now. Their business model has to change to survive much longer. I mean, I don't know that they're as concerned about 3D printing as people think that they should be. And I don't think that they should be as concerned as people think that they should be. I don't know if that made sense. Let me explain. So a lot of people go on about 3D printing and all that kind of stuff, and about how it's gonna destroy Games Workshop and all that kind of stuff. But the number of people, there's a decent amount of people that got 3D printers, don't get me wrong, and that number grows, but it's still an incredibly small amount of people in comparison to the people who play wargaming, right? So the people who are into wargaming, there are folks out there that have got 3D printers, absolutely, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper and better. I enjoy 3D printing, I do. I mean, haven't done it yet. I own a 3D printer, which I have not yet set up yet. Yeah, I know. But I've painted plenty of 3D printed stuff. Mostly stuff I've gotten off of Etsy, or stuff that I've gotten my friend Matt from Game4 to print for me, and things like that. And so that's great. I enjoy being able to dig through STLs over at my mini factory and find cool stuff, and then whatever, all that. It's great. I'm a big fan, so I'm not against 3D printing. It's just not easy, though. It's not as easy as going to the store and going, thank you, and then walking up to the thing, and then giving the money, and then going home and starting to build. It's not hard, particularly, but like right now, the reason I don't have mine set up is because I'm still trying to figure out a decent ventilation system, and that's difficult. That takes probably some sort of me drilling a hole in my house, which is not necessarily something that everybody wants to do. And if you're a renter, you really shouldn't, probably. It's going to go poorly for you. And I know there's lots of other options and things like that, but I'm down in a basement, and there's not really a window in the room that I want to do it in, and it's a whole thing. So I'm going to figure it out eventually, and then I'll be able to print stuff, and it'll be great. But for right now, instead of just buying stuff I'm buying really cool, interesting things you can't get anywhere else other than 3D printing. I'm buying that stuff generally on Etsy or whatever. All of that, though, is not taking away. Like, Games Workshop is still doing just fine. Now, if it becomes so easy and so odorless and so no mess, no fuss, no muss, that you literally just spend a couple $100, you get a machine that you put on a shelf, you walk over there, you go boop, 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 and you print, and then like 20 minutes later, a perfect model comes out that's clean and dry and ready to go. Then yeah, they're gonna have a heckin' concern. Let's just say that. But for right now, I don't know that they're concerned about it. They're keeping an eye on it. I mean, I've heard as much. Someone asked a question basically about this at the press event that I went to at Gen Con back in September. and they were kind of like, I mean, we are aware of 3D printing. We use it ourselves internally, and but I don't know. I don't know that they're ever going to. Well, ever is a long time, certainly. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see them being crazy concerned about it. And again, if they get concerned about it, there's not a lot they can do about it. There's not like they can sue people for making miniatures. Now, if you are selling STLs that are 3D scans of their intellectual property specifically, yeah, they can sue you for that. But if you're like, I want to make something cool that's like a guy in an armored suit, they can't really do anything about that. And there's plenty of people already doing that out there, doing cool stuff. And so if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing you should check out. Let's see here. Yeah, it's cool to find more custom characters with 3D printing. I love like when it was time to start putting together miniatures and things like that, demons for Reign in Hell. It was all not all. It was mostly all 3D printed. There were some Mantic dudes in there too. I think Vince did some Mantic. They were kind of like Demonette ladies, kind of, but they're the Mantic versions, Abyssal something or others. And then I think there was a creature caster or two in there. But otherwise, everything else that was like pictures in the Reign in Hell book that were then digitally painted over and made to look very cool by artistsempire.com. All that stuff is 3D printed, and it was great. I really enjoyed working with it. Sort of excited for Warhammer Old World. Seems GW has always had a random army book codex problem. Your army may have to use an old edition or have 3 updates in a year. It's been heading more, well, for the most part, it's been heading more towards the very quick turnaround. But yeah, back in the day, like I said, when I first started 40K in 5th edition, you got about 3 new codices for 40K in a year, and that was it. And if your army wasn't one of the 3, you weren't getting one this year. And now they've swung that pendulum the other side, where it's constant. So, let's see here. Worrying about ventilation is overrated. I thought you played Skaven. I mean, I do, but I still like to breathe. So glad I have a garage that I can use as my hobby dungeon. I have a garage. I could use it as my hobby dungeon until, well, the raccoons come, and they will, because there's a weird hole that I, like, well, when I say a hole, it's basically the entire back wall of the garage, where the foundation does not meet the wall real good, and raccoons can get through there, and I think that they do, and they try to steal my charcoal briquettes for some reason. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they want with charcoal briquettes. Probably to start fires. Where was I going? Oh, yeah, also, it's not insulated or heated in any way, so in the winter it would suck, and in the summer it sometimes sucks too. So yeah, that's not a, like, if it was an attached garage maybe, then yeah, I would probably think about doing something like that, but it's not attached. By the time you set up your 3D printer, there'll be an upgraded version available for less than you bought this one. Probably so. I mean, the one that I bought now is already selling for less than I bought this one, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's kind of like my dad back in the day. I kept trying to convince him to buy a computer, and he finally was like, look, what I want to do is I'm waiting until they make the best one, and then I'll buy that one. It's not how computers work, though. So I had to buy a computer myself. Let's see here. I'm in a tiny apartment, and I have a 3D Anycubic printer with a small walk-in closet space. Yeah, I don't like the smell, and even though the stuff that I'd be using be the water-based stuff from Elegoo, I still just I want to make sure I get it ventilated. I also don't live by myself. I've got a wife, and 4 cats. One of them is looking at me. Hi, Diesel. How you doing? He's just sort of glaring at me from the sunroom. Let's see here. It's not too bad. I have 2 air filters going. The smells are gone in less than an hour. I bought some of those little not air fresheners. They're like made by Elegoo, and they're like USB powered or something like that, and they're supposed to be charcoal filters, and so I'll hopefully try those out too. 3D printing is great for bits, but the resin models are still a pain. Plastic is so much easier to work with. This is coming from someone who really enjoys 3D printing. I've had really good luck with the resin stuff that I've painted. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it can be a little brittle, more so than plastic. So like dropping can still be an issue in some situations, but I've been real happy with it. Excuse me. I need more coffee. My 3D printed minis are more brittle and break much easier than molded plastics. Gotta handle them gently. Yeah, definitely. Resin is definitely more brittle than plastic. I like to think about 3D printers this way. My ability to make beer at home isn't going to impact the craft beer industry. True. Oh, it's true. I think that's true. Let's see here. I've had great fun reposing miniatures for 3D printing using Blender and then printing them off. Oh, that's kind of cool too. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, yeah. I suppose you could, like, if an arm is like up here, but you want it done. If you know how to use Blender enough, you could disconnect this part and then bend it or move it or whatever. That's pretty cool. Let's see here. Feels like GW might soon exhaust the Lord of the Rings IP unless they branch into the Numenor stuff, but that might be a hard sell as it isn't this big film that everyone's heard of. Yeah, I've been wondering about that too lately, if they're going to be coming out with miniatures that are going to relate to the new TV show from Amazon or not. That I don't know if that's what the Numenor thing is. I've heard the name before, but I don't know if that's the name of the new show or if that's something else. But yeah, I was thinking about that just recently, and it'll be interesting to see. You got an attic? Put it up there. We don't, as it turns out. Well, we have something called eaves attics, which are basically like our house is like a. Technically, it's a story and a half, is what they call it, which would make you think that when you go up onto the second floor, you have to crouch, which is technically not true. But some of the rooms, like one of the outside walls, will have a slant to it a little bit, right? And so there's a spot in one of the rooms where there are these two small little doors, and you open it up and you go through there, and then it's John Malkovich. No, it's not. But what it is it's just like the kind of slanty bit along the side of the roof, and you could store stuff in there that you don't want to frequently. Or if you leave that door even slightly open, Diesel tries to go in there, and then we'll fall down inside the house, and then we'll have to, I don't know, cut a hole in the house to get him out. So we try to keep him out there as much as possible. And his sister, because she's also very interested in there. So, yeah, but we don't have like a normal attic you can stand in. There's just these weird little cubbyhole things. So there's that. My local hobby shop has 3D printing facilities. I'm planning to go down and make some use of it once I get my head around STLs and Hero Forge or whatever. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I wish our shops did that too. That'd be pretty cool. My man cave is in the basement. It is freezing, and I have not had the urge to paint or game. Dang. Yeah, no, all winter long, my basement is about 57 Fahrenheit to about as maybe high as 63, but rarely it's usually around 61 Fahrenheit, which is chilly, kind of, not terrible, but chilly. The longer you sit still down there, it can get, yeah. I got to tell you, like nearly like every Friday when I get done with the stream in the morning and then I come back upstairs, I am just chilled for like a good hour before I finally like warm up. Again, just sitting for 3 hours in kind of one space and just painting, and it's just kind of cool, real cool down there. But on the other hand, in the summer, it is lovely in the basement. So we got that going for us. That's the other thing I have to concern myself too about 3D printing in the basement is the temperature. So not only do I have to ventilate the room a little bit, which may or may not be as important as possible, but I also probably need to get that room up to at least 70 or at least someplace stable so that can be that's also an issue with the printing as well. So I'm trying to figure that out. Raccoons are running a barbecue restaurant for other animals. What are they barbecuing? People who don't, or animals who don't pay, I guess, get barbecued. I don't know. Let's see here. My wife likes to keep the hobby in my hobby room. I just take over most of the basement, as it turns out. My wife has taken over a good portion of the second floor, and the middle floor here is whatever. The first floor is this is our area, you know. Now, admittedly, the second floor is smaller, again, because of that whole, thing I was talking about with the roof, but it's fine. Diesel time, how's the old man doing? Well, he's not staring at me anymore. Now he's laying down. He's taking a nap. He's doing okay. He's been he's got I'm not sure when we've got a doctor's appointment with him again. Maybe this summer, I think. But so far, so good. He's been doing well. This upcoming summer will be 2 years since he was diagnosed with. He's got intestinal cancer. Our cat, our oldest cat, Diesel. He's 17, and he's got intestinal cancer, which was discovered in summer of 2020. And the doctors were like, "Well, you might have another 2 to 3 years." So at this point, it'll be 2 years. Like I've said this before, we thought we were going to lose him this past spring, 2021, because he was getting real, it was going downhill, and then tweaked a bunch of the meds and all that kind of stuff, and that's helped a ton. And so he's been pretty happy, crotchety but happy. Let me see here. Set up the printer in the house. Start living outside in a tent. Not a good idea this time of the year. I just assemble my models into one piece in Blender and then print whole. Takes 90% of the fiddliness out of the resin prints for me. Yeah, I can see that. My roomie would move me into the parking lot if I got a 3D printer. She complains a lot about my priming. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't like to prime in the house either. I mean, with with Airbrush, yeah, no problem. But if I have to prime something with a rattle can, like a piece of terrain, I usually like to use spray cans for terrain, specifically plastic terrain. I generally want to do it outside. And of course, at this time of the year, it's not great. So I've been doing Swedish death cleaning and have sold off around $8,000 in games, music, and comics, just keeping what I play. I've not heard of Swedish death cleaning, but it sounds like a cool thing. You put it in quotes. I'll have to look that up. I just printed 2 Tau Storm Surge for $8. That cost difference is significant. GW needs to be concerned. I mean, I don't know. So here's the issue. If they are actual Tau Storm Surge, then that's, frankly, it's piracy. Like, if they scanned a real plastic built model and then handed it out to people for free, sold it, whatever, that I'm not for. I'm against that. Now, if it is a model that somebody made that is Tau-ish or something Tau-esque or is going to be counts as Storm Surge, great, that's fine. But piracy's piracy. So, that's kind of like saying, well, Games Workshop should be, concerned because people keep photocopying their books. Well, what are you going to do about that? You know what I mean? That's just illegal. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff, frankly. Again, I'm not against 3D printing. I am against piracy. So if somebody just scanned a 3D model from, the Tau and decided to start handing out that STL, that's wrong. Shouldn't do that. If someone made something themselves that looks kind of close to a Tau or whatever, and there are, again, Games Workshop, if they want to sue people, they'll do it. They got people for that. They don't need permission. You know what I mean? They got plans there. But I just, I don't like piracy. There's a lot of people who are like, well, this book thing doesn't matter because I'll just go and download the books off of the Pirate Bay if that's even still a thing or whatever. And I don't agree with any of that either. I don't need, I can understand having to steal food for your family. I'm not, I get that. That's a thing you need. I don't understand being like, well, I can't afford these Games Workshop books, so I'm going to steal them. Not even the actual books themselves, but I don't dig it. And I know there's a lot of people out there like, well, you're not actually stealing anything, blah, blah, blah. I just don't, as a person who actually produces things, I don't like piracy. I don't know. I guess it's weird, but I just am not a big fan. So, that's a thing. And here's the thing. GW needs to be concerned because you printed two Tau Storm Surge for $8. What are they going to do? Stop stealing? Stop people from stealing? I mean, they've tried that in the past. I don't know. Not much they can do about it. What can't you barbecue? Cake? Maybe? I don't know. The books are targeted at the vets who have a large collection of models. I have Tau and Old Space Marines, and I have been collecting since second edition. All I really buy is the new books, new rules, and the codex. Yeah, I can see that. We searched for a house with a large basement just so I could have a big nerd room. Nice. It's good. It's a good plan to have, I think. 17 is really old for any cat. Diesel's going through is amazing. Yeah, he's a trooper. Let's see here. I've been resin printing some Star Wars busts to paint at the moment. I've never been a person into busts, like painting busts and things like that. I mean, I like to see people do good work on it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against the concept. I just have always been like, I want to paint stuff I'm going to play with. I don't know. Maybe at some point my mind will change and I'll want to move into more of a display painty kind of a bust thing or something like that. But for right now, I'm always just kind of painting things personally that I like to, that I know I'll be able to at least probably use on the table at some point. I have a suspicion if I tried to paint a bust, I would try to paint it quickly for tabletop and then it would look weird. I don't know. I should probably give it a try sometime just to see what happens. Maybe make a video about it. I'd say if it was copied and spread without profit, that's not piracy. Nope, that's actually not true. Let's see here. So far, they've been DMCAing things, but there have been complaints that they're a bit click happy on the fantasy side of things. I'm not sure, like 3D models and stuff, like through like My Mini Factory. I guess I'm not sure what that is. There's a plethora of unique and creative stuff in the fantasy football miniature scenes. That's the thing. I don't mind when somebody makes something that looks kind of like. I know there were some people recently that were like, well, those new models from Mini Wargaming, those kind of, those Veil Touched is what they're called. They're like, well, they're just like knockoffs of Chaos. And I'm like, well, not really. I mean, they're not the same models for sure. They are adjacent to, they are kind of like, but they're, if a person who knew both things looked at them, they'd be like, well, I know that that's Games Workshop and that's not. And it's not even necessarily about quality, but sometimes it's maybe about quality, depends on the company. But yeah, it's just a situation of like, there's nothing that says you can't make something that looks kind of like that. That's not a problem. If someone made a Storm Surge model that they spent the time to sit down and it's not the Storm Surge, but it's maybe along the same lines. I mean, like, look at one-page rules. Like, one-page rules, like the artwork in their booklet, so much where you can look at it and go, oh, that's a Tau guy. Oh, that's an Imperial Guard guy. I mean, it's not exactly. They're kind of skirting the line there, and that's, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to do things generally that are a little bit more, I don't want to say, like, I want to go in a different direction sometimes. I like, 40K is fine, don't get me wrong, but if I want to play 40K, I guess I'd play 40K or something adjacent to 40K, but I like to also be able to kit bash and go in weird directions and stuff like that. Someone makes a sculpt that's like, I'm going to use this as a counts as Storm Surge, great, all day, not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. But if someone just scanned a plastic model that somebody else built and whatever, then I'm not a big fan of that. Let's see here. Speaking as someone who has caught people recasting my sculpts, I approve of Tabletop Minions anti-piracy sentiments. Yeah, I absolutely. It's the same thing as my friend telling me that instead of buying Forge World to buy ChinaCast instead. I'm sure Forge World is more expensive, but my conscience is clean. Yeah, same thing here. I just not a fan of that stuff. You can make a cheesecake on a smoker? Ooh. Is cheesecake cake? I mean, well, yeah, sort of. Smoked cheesecake sounds pretty good, though, honestly. Not too much smoke. Let's see here. Do you think GW would do a print-on-demand service? Well, they have that. Well, not really. I mean, they have sometimes those weeks where they're like, hey, made to order, and you can get this and this and this. And you're like, but it's generally all resin. Not 3D printed resin, but like poured resin stuff. You go to the GW store, use some sort of CAD, customize a squad, character. I mean, in the future, maybe. In the far, far future, maybe you go to your local Warhammer store and you're like, I need 5 Tau Pathfinders, please. And then they go, okay, cool. And then they're like, you do it on an app first. You'd be like, I need 5 Tau from my local store. They're like, cool, they'll be done tomorrow. And then you show up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they're already packaged in a little box and stuff like that and everything. And they're all done. And yeah, because honestly, in that situation, then they don't have to ship that crap all over the world. You know what I mean? Like that stuff could be made right there. Yeah, maybe they have to ship the resin and that kind of stuff, but resin can come from all over the place. And so as long as you're using the properly chapter-approved resin in the chapter-approved machine at the store, maybe someday I could see them doing that as a service. It'll be a while, but it's a possibility. And then that way, there's no like, you're getting it from them. They would probably have to get more than one person working at a store, though, because right now there's generally most of those stores there's one employee, not per day, but like for the entire store. So they might have to double up. Ever played Risk or Lord of the Ring Risk? I played Risk years ago. Yeah, I haven't played Lord of the Rings Risk. No, I feel like you would like it, even though it's a board game. I mean, back in the day, I played Risk, and I enjoyed that well enough when I was a kid. I haven't played it in forever, though. I've always wanted to try Risk Legacy. That sounds interesting. I painted my Black Templar minis, or is that Battletech minis? It's either Black Templar or Battletech, one of the two. For games, but they had more time being on display. Sure. Let's see here. I'm old/new in the hobby. What's your best tips? I'm an orc boy. Paint, but don't have the guts to play. Dry brushing. If you're playing orcs, you want to dry brush things. Dry brush and a lot of wash. That helps. Gates of Antari's line has some really nice sci-fi figures that can be used, so there's lots of other choices. I've looked a little bit at Gates of Antari models, and something about them just doesn't trip my, I don't want to say trigger, but I've never come across one that I've been like, oh, and I don't know why. I should look at them again. Maybe they've done some new sculpts recently that are a little bit more to my liking. It's kind of a little bit like Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings. Their earliest sculpts, there were some that I was like, and there were other ones that I was like, meh. But they've been doing some new ones that I've been like, oh. So, I got that going for me. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll see how that works out. I have so unsteady hands, I'm terrified of resin my plastic miniatures endure. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I have a suspicion over time. I mean, as it is already, you went from within 3D printing resin, from the stuff you had to clean with isopropyl alcohol to the water washable stuff. They've started to reduce the amount of odor. I mean, as time goes on and as technology advances, I'm sure that 3D printed resins will get less stinky, less brittle, less and get better and better and better as the time goes on. They've already done it over the last just 3-4 years, so it'll continue to happen. We're just not there yet, but for right now, resin can be a bit brittle, certainly. I try to take relatively good care of my miniatures anyway. It's also generally light enough that rarely, if you drop it, if it's a small 28mm size miniature, I've dropped 28 size miniatures that are resin printed that have not snapped. Bigger models, probably onto, like, say, a hard surface like tile or concrete or hardwood or something like that, probably going to have a bit more of a problem. Castle Risk is fun if you can find it. I think I've heard of that, but I've never seen it. Let's see here. There's a new Risk Legacy game on the way. Main guy works for Restoration Games now, so we'll see how it is. Oh, interesting, yeah. I think it's going to be a long time, says John Russell, before 3D printers compete with the resolution of molds, and the issue of 3D printing needing to layer up versus filling a void with liquid. I mean, that filling a void with liquid sort of thing is, yeah. I mean, that's generally what you're doing in those situations, especially with bigger models when you're doing resin, is that you're very frequently, like a lot of the slicing software now has a thing where you can like put a hole in it so that the resin drains out, and that kind of stuff. And then it will actually print the plug as well, so that when you're all done, you can kind of slide that plug back in there and glue it into place, which I think was interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of problems that need to be fixed, but right now, like, I've been really happy with the resin stuff that I've been painting, and I'm looking forward to doing some more. Has anyone thought about your hobby and aging, like eyesight failing, shaking hands, etc.? I made a video about that, actually. Gosh, a couple years ago, maybe more. I forget what it's called. Hobby and aging or something like that. But if you look on my channel, there's a I believe that the thumbnail is in black and white, kind of. Not all, I mean, like the logo's in color, but the rest of the thumbnail's in black and white, and that's because it's old-timey. I don't know. But yeah, I did make a video about like those things. I have these they have like stems like glasses do, and you can't wear them with my glasses, but then there's like a white thing, it's plastic, and then there's like little magnifiers that are adjustable, and you can put different ones in there. And there's even a light in there if you want to do it. I've used those in like situations where I need to paint something really small, and I talked about like ways to like steady your arms, you know, and like do, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, there's definitely that kind of stuff. Risk 2210 AD, but I haven't got my group to play it yet. I've heard from many people that that is very possibly the best Risk that's ever been made. Risk 2210 is like evidently the best. So that's kind of cool. I love the idea of going to a GW store and they 3D print you a bunch of miniatures and prints on demand. It would also reduce the need to keep so much stock in the premises. Very true. Very true. Yeah. It's a future thing, probably a far future thing, but still a future thing. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming by and talking about books and sometimes being too many books and that kind of stuff and everything else that we talked about as well. So let's see. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow I'll be on Twitch from 7 p.m. Central Time until 10 p.m. Central Time. I'll be continuing to paint on the Grey Seer and starting more on the Warlock Engineer Skavens that I'm doing for my Warcry warband, my next Warcry warband. And so yeah, I'll be there, and then I'll be back on Friday morning as well, also on Twitch. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming by today, and I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon or your evening or your next day, which is already Monday or whatever, depending on where you live. And I also hope you have a good week.